Hey, what's going on YouTube? My name is Arden Studios and welcome back to another YouTube video. So in today's YouTube video, guys, I'm going to be playing Anime Dimensions once again, and this is going to be a video where I give you guys a few tips and tricks on that might help you with beating the Jujutsu Kaisen map. Now, I'm not the greatest at the game, and I don't have too much experience with the new map yet, but I did pick up a few tips just from playing the map a little bit that I think might help you guys out. So I'm gonna go through some tips I think would help, and yeah, thank you guys so much for supporting the videos. When you leave nice comments down below, it really helps me out. And please consider leaving a like or subscribing to the video because it helps my content get out there, and we're gonna just reach more and more of an audience. I'm super appreciative of how the Anime Dimensions content has been doing, and thank you guys all so much. Sorry for the long intro, let's get into the video. Now, you might have noticed that I'm in character test. Before we even get into the main tips, I'm gonna tell you guys right now that the two characters I recommend for doing this with the strategies I'm gonna be using are Bakugou and Rimaru. Now, I also would like to clarify that the strategies I'm gonna be using are just gonna help you beat the dungeon on your own, but not necessarily in hardcore. In fact, these might even hurt you in hardcore, and you'll see why. But they are just to help you beat the dungeon in the time limit, so that's gonna be a factor to a lot of my choices here, but I recommend using Bakugou or Rimaru. Now, the reason why is because both of these guys have specials where the AoE revolves around their center. As you can see, my AoE goes around me with Rimaru's special, and with Bakugou's special, as you can see, my AoE goes around me, as well as that they both have big AoE moves. Now, if you take into account characters, for example, this one, Ulturia, Excalibur, it's good, but the AoE isn't too huge, and now I'll again explain to you why this is so important on the map. But first, let's go there. Now that we're at the Jujutsu Kaisen map, I'm going to explain a few things off the bat that are important to note. First of all, this map, unlike the Demon Slayer or Attack on Titan map, has a lot of enemies appear at once throughout a long distance. What this means is that grouping strategies are much more effective. As you guys can see, if you just group together enemies like this, you're going to get a lot more, and you'll actually see that become more apparent later on. Now, the thing is, I'm not doing it here, but I'll explain to you what I do for this map, and that's going to be in this next room. There's a lot of rooms similar to this one, where if you just line yourself up in the right direction and use your big AoE specials, you can pretty much hit all the enemies in a vicinity, and yeah, you can just take out an entire room instantly. Now, then what I recommend you do is while your special is on cooldown, that's when you want to group together the other enemies. Now, the reason why this isn't going to be an effective strategy for modes like hardcore mode is because of the simple fact that when enemies are grouped together, you can die much easier. Taking one hit from an enemy can feel like taking 100 hits from an enemy, and so in that case, it's really important that you don't get hit. And honestly, if you're going to use this strategy for hardcore, which is definitely possible, just focus really a lot on not getting hit during the grouping segment. Wait until all of your enemies are grouped together in this next room, and then you're going to want to use your special once again. Now, it's also really important that your special can one-tap the enemies. As you guys can see, my special can barely do it. I have to get kind of lucky with crits, so that's really important to keep in mind. As for the bosses, I'm still trying to learn their patterns myself. There's not much I can say here, but oh, I missed an enemy. Okay, make sure that doesn't happen when you're grouping up enemies. Let me go quickly take out these guys. But now, as what I was saying, with the bosses, there isn't too many tips I can give. My main one is, honestly, first of all, I think the Soul Shaper boss is actually harder than the final boss, just because of the fact that they have so many attacks that are so huge in AoE and hard to dodge. But I recommend you save your special for when they summon their minions. That way you get that bigger AoE and you can take out their minions a lot easier. Also, I will be honest with you, Zetsu is definitely going to be good for these bosses, especially because of the fact that you really don't want to have moves where you have to stand still to use them, and if you take into account things like how Rimaru's Gluttony makes you stand still for a long period of time, that is a huge disadvantage. In fact, if I'm being honest, sometimes I just have to avoid using that entirely because of the fact that it's going to get me to lose by standing still for such a long period of time. So if you have somebody, especially Zetsu, who gives you all those invincibility stability frames and quick attacks, they're definitely going to help you out a good amount. But for these bosses, the main tip I can give you is just really just play out the fight very safely. Don't worry about getting too many hits in, because these bosses have a lot of attacks and you really need to stay focused. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to do this one without dying right now. You really need to stay focused, rely on that special in order to hit more enemies. Now, I just finished up the boss fight, but, again, I did die. I'm not the greatest at this yet. I definitely can't solo it on hardcore, but I do recommend you don't do hardcore till you get some of the better cards, because the cards in this world are really good. But as you guys can see in this next room, the exact same concept of grouping is honestly going to apply. I do recommend that you abuse these little areas to the right and left of all the enemies in order to make sure that you're really just getting all of these enemies together, and really rely on your ultimate on this map. Don't be afraid to just wait till you get it, because if you're trying to avoid the risk of dying, having your ultimate out is going to be really good. But after you get through those few rooms, you're going to get to the final room, and to be completely honest with you here, I missed another enemy. And if I'm being completely honest with you here, this map isn't actually too bad in length. If you just group up all the enemies because the rooms are a lot bigger, then you're honestly going to be able to get through this map. I would say not too bad, especially on non-hardcore. The boss fights are actually, in my opinion, probably going to be more of a struggle, but this room is another perfect room for these really high AoE ultimate abilities. They just come in such handiness when the rooms are so big. But now we're going to get to the final boss, and I'll see what tips I can give you guys here. To be honest, this boss fight, in my opinion, is again actually easier because it doesn't summon those minions, but all you really have to worry about on this fight is not doing what I just did and standing still. But he has one attack that's very similar to Akaza's Palm Blast. Here you just have to stand in the grid and then move out of the way, and to be honest, if you just keep moving in a circle and then stopping during the grid attack, you should be good off with beating this fight, if I'm being completely honest. Moving in a circle lets you dodge the air blasts, and then all you really need to do is stop once that grid gets created. Now I messed it up there, but what I actually would recommend is don't dash that much during this fight. The thing that I guess makes these fights a lot harder is that fights that initially promoted you dashing, they now kind of want you to be more micro-adjusting and being able to make more adaptable movements, so definitely don't dash as much as you may have in the previous fights in the game. Also, if you do have attacks like Gluttony, where the attack takes some time to do, what I do recommend you do is use the attack right after the Palm Blasts end, because there is going to be a short time period before the grid attack comes up, and that's going to be your best chance at getting an attack in. I might actually make a boss guide once I get more familiar with the bosses. I don't know how much that'll help you guys, but I'll see about making it. With that being said, we are coming up on a close to the fight, and that wasn't the best run. I did die two or three times, but overall, that is going to be the best tips I can give you to beat this map on your own, especially if you're just coming from the Demon Slayer map. Also, keep in mind that the cards for this map are pretty good, actually. The epic card I got from this map was better than my legendary, a lot better, actually. So definitely look at the new cards you get, because, like, as you guys can see here, we're gonna take cards like these green ones, and they're not that much worse than the legendary from Akaza, but as you guys can see, I do have a Soul Shapers card, and this card is pretty good, especially it's a lot better than Akaza's stats, so you do want to be using those new cards. With that being said, I hope some of these tips could have helped you out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all later. Peace.